own existence, when you start paying attention to the spiritual aspect of your own existence regularly, that is why the regularity of the practice is necessary. When you do it, what exactly happens is that the spiritual aspect of our existence now gradually starts expanding. As it expands, what will happen? It will just influence the functioning of the mind and the body. Prior to that, what was there behind the mind and the body? Behind the body and the mind, there was only samskaras, which was driving the functioning of the mind. Now, when you become aware of the spiritual aspect of the existence, now there are two competing forces for leading the functioning of the mind and the body. There is one set of samskaras which you have actually stored in, and there are the other spiritual experiences that we pass through. Now, these two vie with each other to influence the mind and the body. There are times when you get influenced by the samskaras. There are times when you get influenced by the spiritual conditions. Over a period of time, what you should see is that gradually the spiritual conditions should become more and more prominent in the way that it manifests in your life. In other words, the mind and the body will start coming more and more under the influence of the spiritual aspect of your existence rather than the samskaras, which were the predominant determinant of the functioning of the mind and the body. This is a gradual journey. Now, eventually, you will settle down in that state where the mind and the body is only influenced by the spiritual aspect of your existence, and the samskaras cease to have any impact in the way that it's going to influence your life. Okay, this is the spiritual journey. Now, when we gradually reach towards that state where the spirituality has now taken hold of our life, what will then happen? We are now more closer to reality. Now, gradually, we are knocking on the door of the reality. Prior to that, when we were under the influence of the samskaras, we were knocking on the door of spirituality. Now, the door was open, and then the spiritual level of existence manifested. Eventually, as we go higher and higher in spirituality, finer and finer states manifest, and then in the end, we knock on the door of the reality. Now, the door of the reality is also open for you. When the door of the reality is opened, then you start leading a real life. When the door of reality is opened, you start feeling blissful. It is called as real bliss. Now that gradually, that also dissipates. So in other words, initially your life is led by the samskaras. Then your life is led by the spiritual experiences or the spiritual conditions that you pass through. That is where all your 13 points and all the conditions in the 13 points are. Then at the third level, reality now actually, the real bliss starts having an impact on your functioning of the mind and the body. Eventually, that real bliss also now dissipates. Then we can say that we have reached our goal. Remember Babaji saying, where religion ends, spirituality begins. Where spirituality ends, reality begins. Where reality ends, real bliss begins. Where real bliss also ends, then we have reached our goal. Got the point? This is the explanation for that. Now, all of us should develop an ability to look at ourselves and see what is our actually life being influenced by. Is it influenced by our samskaras, which are basically giving rise to a lot of beliefs and knowledge and various other things? Or is it actually led by the spiritual experiences? The spiritual. Now, how do you know that the spiritual experiences are influencing your life? The way that you are functioning in the past under the influence of the samskaras was so way different than the current functioning under the influence of the spiritual condition. In other words, you will recognize that the thought and the functioning of the body and the mind is now way different than what it used to be in the past. It is at this phase you start feeling that every relationship that you have had in your life, the way that you are looking at your life is now getting reset. Every relationship will get reset because previously the basis of the relationship was samskaras. Now, samskaras are no longer the basis of your relationship. It is now the spirituality which is now become the basis of your relationship. Okay. One practical example of that is what we are doing. All of us are from 5 different backgrounds. We don't know each other, but we are bound together. Now, how are we bound together? Not by the samskaras. We are bound together by spirituality. Can you see? This is the practical experience of it. Now, the ease with which you are able to mingle and actually gel with one another, this ability to mingle and gel with one another with ease comes with spirituality. It does not come as with samskaras. Samskaras actually act as a blockages for our ease with we gel with people. Samskaras actually do not facilitate, it actually acts as a blockage. Spirituality facilitates your mingling with people without any differentiation. Initially, you start mingling with all people. Over a period of time, the same thing extends to all living beings, all entire creation, because entire creation is of God only. All has come from the same source. So, as and when spirituality expands, you will see that your ability to mingle with everything in nature, in creation, becomes so much easier that you no longer feel apart from the creation. You feel that you are playing your part in the larger scheme of the things, the larger play of the things. When you are able to feel that, then you will see that life is so fun. Why are we actually struggling unnecessarily in this life? Remember, when a parent sends you to a cinema or to a park, they want you to enjoy and come back. They don't want you to struggle in the cinema and struggle in the park and come back. Do you know? Likewise, if God has sent you into this garden of earth, what does He want you to do? He wants you to enjoy the life here, be happy, and then go back to Him. He doesn't want you to struggle or suffer or anything of that kind. He has no, in fact, God does not have any idea of suffering. He doesn't know what is suffering. Because the central has no mind. If it has no mind, where is the question of idea of suffering? It is not there at all. So I will stop here, pause, and then any thoughts or questions you want to ask, you can ask, and then we can proceed with the thing. Gopal Krishna, you asked something in the chat box. What is it? At which point do we feel settled in the spiritual existence? It's a gradual process. See, in our spiritual system, we gradually feel more and more settled as we go higher and higher in our chakras. So, in the first chakra, we will feel settled to some extent. So, settledness is a feeling that gradually intensifies and refines as we go higher and higher in the chakras. Okay. Now, the test for settledness is how unsettled you feel when you are put in difficult set of circumstances. That is the test for the settledness. If little bit of difficulty that you face in life and you feel totally unsettled means you are still not fully settled in spirituality. Can you see? So somebody said something bad to you for a minute, and then the whole next 1 week you are thinking about it. That means you are not settled in spirituality. Somebody said bad to you for 1 week, but you did not even feel 1 minute of unsettledness. That's a good degree of settledness. Can you see? So, in other words, the answer to your question is as we move from one point to the next point, the consciousness gets refined. More the consciousness that it gets refined, and the more we are able to operate from that level of consciousness, the more settled we will feel in our life. Although the feeling of settledness is predominantly felt in 3 different points. It is felt in all points, but in 3 points, it is very, very distinct and very clearly felt by most of the people. The second point, the 7th point, and the 12th point. The points where the space element dominates, there the feeling of subtleness is very vividly felt. Okay. Any other question?
I have one question. I was listening to one speech of Daji. I don't know what was it. He said we have to walk through different dimensions of life. Means what are those dimensions like? Can you explain?
Yeah, you can look at it from two different perspectives. One dimension is how, see, from every chakra, the way that we experience our life changes. Suppose you come to the first point and you get a reasonable hang of the conditions at the first point. Now, the conditions at the first point is going to influence the way that you are going to experience the life. Remember, for us to experience the life, we have got only two instruments, which is the mind and the body. Now, if the condition of the first point is influencing the condition of the mind and the body, the way that we will experience the life will be different. Now, you can look at it as one dimension. Then you come to the second point, you have different dimension. You come to the third point, you have multiple other dimensions. So in other words, we keep moving from point to point. As when we keep moving, we experience different dimensions of life. In that particular respect, you can say the different dimensions of life is nothing but different levels of subtlety of the life that you are experiencing. Now, if you look at a slightly different explanation, the microcosm is a manifestation of the macrocosm. We had read about it, we had spoken about it. This is the microcosm. Human frame consists of everything that is there in the universe, the macrocosm. If that is the case, if we are journeying to in the microcosm, correspondingly, without our knowledge, we are also journeying through the macrocosm. Did you get this point? Human body consists of everything that is there in the universe. So if we are passing, where are the chakras? The chakras are located in our physical body. There are locations, no? So if you are moving across different chakras in the physical body, correspondingly, you are also moving in the different aspects of the macrocosm. So when we leave this body at the time of death, the extent to which you have journeyed to the microcosm will also be the extent to which you have journeyed to the macrocosm. When we leave the body here, our soul goes and merges into that level of macrocosm where it had already journeyed correspondingly. This is another way of looking at it. Of course, the dimensions are multiple. Although I just said earlier on that one point, second point, these are different dimensions. In between the points also, there are multiple subpoints. And in between those subpoints also, you can call them as dimensions. So there are innumerable dimensions that we have to pass through. But for the sake of ease, we will say we will only pass through 13 different dimensions. That is just for the sake of ease. Now, these 13 different dimensions is located as different lokas in the Puranas. So we move from one loka to other loka, and then to next loka, and then to the next loka. That is what usually happens, the journey. So that's another way of looking at different dimensions of journey. So dimensions of journey can be looked at from the perspective of points and subpoints, can the perspective of the subtlety of the consciousness, and from the perspective of different lokas. All are each valid from their own perspective. But all are not different. If the journey occurs through one perspective of dimension, other perspective dimensions are also taken into account in that part of the journey only. I'm not sure whether I made sense or not. I have explained what does it mean.
So, for example, there was one. I read one whispers of Chariji that Babaji said, when you come to Greater World, I'll give you work in some other dimension. I am not sure if that is, I am putting it rightly, but what dimension does he refer to? Are there any other dimensions?
I just now said multiple dimensions. There are multiple levels of subtlety of the consciousness. Each level of subtlety of the consciousness refers to one dimension. So that extent to which you actually evolve, to that extent, you will develop an ability to move to that dimension of consciousness. So, for example, Daji keeps saying that the kind of vibration that you have at the time of death is the corresponding vibration to which the soul will actually go and merge to after death, leaving the body. You have read that what happens after death. So, if the soul is vibrating at a final level, it will go and merge into the final levels of the consciousness, where not in the microcosm, because the microcosm is shed, the body is shed. However, the journey that has occurred within the body in the microcosm is something that happens at the macrocosm. So the soul merges at that level of vibration in the macrocosm. That is what happens. Now, there again, is it really the journey in the body? Although we locate the points in the different parts of the body, is the journey in the body? If you just look at the points that we discussed earlier, I said there are three levels of existence: the physical, the mental, and the spiritual. So, where is the journey occurring there? The journey is occurring in the spiritual level of existence. Where is the spiritual level of existence? It is between the mind and the self. That is where the spiritual level of existence is there. Although we correspondingly look at it from the perspective of the body, we say that the first point is here, the second point is here. Now, that is something we are looking at it from the perspective of the body. But the actual journey is in the spiritual dimension. Now, this internal spiritual dimension and the external macrocosm, they are both related to one another. So, when the journey occurs here in the spiritual dimension within, it is also a journey that is occurring simultaneously in the macrocosm. It's almost like, suppose you take a mirror. If I move my hand, simultaneously there is a movement in the mirror also, the hand in the mirror. They are both together. Likewise, if you look at the microcosm and macrocosm, they are mirror images of one another. If the journey occurs in one realm, then the corresponding journey in the other realm also occurs simultaneously.
That means, brother, the whatever spiritual action I take here happens here, that will reflect in the actions of the microcosm of the this, of spiritual existence, right?
Repeat it again.
Whatever my spiritual actions happen here, like if I do anything, that will affect that uh, journeys in the microcosm journey also, right?
The changes that you undergo in the spiritual level of existence is the changes that you are undergoing in the microcosm. Okay? Now, when there are changes in the microcosm, it correspondingly gives rise to changes in the macrocosm. They both happen simultaneously. You don't journey separately in the outer world or in the brighter world. The more you grow in this world, in the brighter world level, correspondingly, the more you grow in the brighter world also together. That's why, even though we might be progressing spiritually here, our journey is correspondingly occurring in the brighter world also. They both are related to one another. So, if you want to look at, say, dimensions, every class that you pass through in the school can be looked at as one dimension. Say, till you come to the 10th standard, you have 10 dimensions. Then after that, you have further dimensions as you go to higher colleges and the degree and the postgraduate degree. Each year, you can look at it as one dimension. Now, in each year, you have to actually master some of the things that you are supposed to learn in that year. Likewise, in each point, you have to master to some extent the conditions that you are supposed to get at that particular point. Only when you have had some amount of degree of experience and mastery over the conditions at a particular point, you are given permission to move to the next point. If you scored 35% marks in that particular year, then you are given permission to move to the next point, next year. If you don't even get 35%, are they going to let you go to the next year? That means you have not learned what you're supposed to learn at that dimension. So when you learn things at a particular dimension, you are given permission to move to the next dimension. That's how the journey occurs. So each point you can take as one dimension, but that is only for a broader understanding. But in between the points also, there are multiple subpoints. And each one you can take it as further sub-dimension. Like for example, in each for example, you have 6 subjects in say 4th standard, and you have scored 50 plus marks in 5 subjects. But there's one subject that you scored only 30. Now you might have done reasonably well in the 5 subjects, but the fact that you did not get that 35 in that 6th subject holds you back now. So you're not allowed to move to the next dimension. Now, what happens in our spiritual journey? If you have a living master, suppose you got 30 marks and you require 5 marks, the master will come in and say, no, 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 this is a good student. He is studious in his studies. I'll give him 5 grace marks, and then he'll give you 5 grace marks and pushes you to the next year, pushes you to the next dimension. Now, that is the role of the master. All of us are not 50, 60, 70% candidates. All of us are 20, 30% candidates only. All of us move from one dimension to the other dimension because of the grace of the master. That is the importance of the living master. Now, remember, if there is no living master who can actually talk on your behalf, who can present your case and say, no, 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 he is my student, he is all right, he has good potential, please push him to the next, and give 5 grace marks, you will all be held up at one dimension. This is the trouble when you practice spirituality alone. There's nobody to actually wow for you. There's nobody who can actually push you in the journey. But if you have a living master behind you, they can take care of some of these pitfalls in between. They can make sure that the journey progresses seamlessly without too much of hindrances. Of course, we have to play our part. You will not say, anyway, master is going to give me 5 marks. I'm only supposed to get 30 marks. Let me aim for 30 only. That you cannot say. You should try to get 50 or 60, whatever. Master comes in if there is a pitfall. But our job is to make sure that we put in the full effort. Okay? Now, what kind of effort in spirituality? Can anybody say? What kind of effort? What is the difference in effort in spirituality versus the other materiality? Is there any difference in effort?
Practice, first of all.
I'm very specific in the question. What kind of effort?
What kind?
Ganeshan, you want to say something? We are not able to hear you. You are unmuted, but you are not able to hear.
Is it a character formation?
Anybody else? One word. I'm looking for one word.
Attitude.
Inner versus outer. Inner versus outer effort.
Bharat, you want to try?
Like you said, external, the finite and infinite.
The question was, what kind of effort? What is the difference in effort in spiritual realm versus material realm?
The change that you
Effort in the spiritual realm is effortlessness. Effortless effort is spirituality. Effortful effort is materiality. In other words, in spirituality, the more effort means less the force. You remember meditation? What did I say? In meditation, no force to be used. That is effortless effort. In materiality, you have to use more force. Because in materiality, your life is led by concentration, where there is effort involved. In spirituality, the life is led by meditation, where there is no force involved. In other words, the effort in spiritual realm becomes more and more powerful as it becomes effortless. In materiality, the effort becomes more and more powerful as and when you put in more energy or force into it. It's a very fundamental difference. In other words, when can you tap into the spiritual world or the spiritual level of existence? When all efforts that we make at the level of the body and the mind is kept quiet. That is what we do in meditation. Then something else is working though. What is it working? The idea that there is a source of divine light, which is the goal, is working in the background. It is working in a very effortless way. We just sit with that suggestion and leave it, and then wait for things to unfold. In a way, that suggestion that you give is the key to your spiritual world. So when you give that suggestion and then sit quietly at the level of the body and the mind, you will see that certain things are getting unfolded within you, uncovered within you. That is your own spiritual level of existence. Now, while undergoing this process, if you put in effort at the level of the mind or the body, you are interfering with the process. So spiritual realm of existence opens up by effortlessness. But it's not effortlessness without a goal. Effortlessness with a goal, with a focus. In materiality, there is effort plus object, a finite object. Here, the object is infinite in spirit meditation. That's the fundamental difference. In other words, in spirituality, the more active you are at the level of the mind and the body, the more you are interfering with the work of unfolding of the spiritual condition. The less effortful. Now, that doesn't mean to say that you should not be oriented towards the goal. You should not be aware. Awareness is something beyond attention. It's finer than attention. Okay. So what are you doing in meditation? You are just aware of what is unfolding. That is all your job is in meditation. You remind the mind of the goal and allow for things to evolve and become aware of it. That is what you do in meditation. That is spiritual journey. Does it make sense? That is what you do. So if in meditation you do anything that's going to make the mind more active, awareness is not related to the mind. Awareness is coming from somewhere else. Although it is experienced at the level of the mind, it's coming from somewhere else. So with the help of awareness, we get to know what is happening during the course of the meditation and in our spiritual journey. Now this awareness, the light of awareness, should be kept active throughout our day, not just when we close our eyes. We should keep observing ourselves all the time with awareness. Now, day before yesterday, when we went and gave a talk some other place, I gave one example, how to kind of keep track of what is going on in spiritual realm of existence. It's like a mother keeping track of a baby which is playing in the hall. The mother is cooking in the kitchen. Although the mother is cooking in the kitchen, the mother always keeps an eye on the baby which is playing in the hall. Exactly like that. We might be busy in our material world here. That's like we are being busy in the kitchen. However, like the mother keeps an eye on the baby, likewise, we need to keep an eye on what is happening at the level of the heart all the time. So till the child grows to a certain extent, where the mother is confident that the child can manage itself, protect itself appropriately, the mother continues to keep an eye. Likewise, till we reach a certain level of spiritual elevation, where we can keep an eye on the conditions that is coming at the spiritual level automatically, without effort. Initially, we have to bring the attention of the mind onto the heart and check what is happening. Like the mother initially keeps going to the hall and then making sure that the baby is fine. Suppose the baby starts crying, what will the mother do? The mother will stop everything that she is cooking and then come to the rescue of the baby. She'll start paying attention to the baby. Likewise, if the spiritual condition that you have got is crying, how does it cry? It says, you are getting lost of this spiritual condition. Then you have to let go of all the material things that you are doing, come to the rescue of the spiritual condition. It's like taking care of your baby. It is your baby. Where is that baby? That baby is in your own heart, not outside. So you should never do anything that will the mother do anything to make the baby cry? Will you do anything? Nobody will do it. No adult will do anything to make the baby cry unnecessarily. Right? Likewise, we should not make the spiritual condition cry. It is our duty. We should pay attention and awareness as much as necessary and nurture that spiritual condition. By paying attention to the baby, the mother nurtures the baby. Likewise, by paying attention to the spiritual condition, by being aware of it, we actually nurture the spiritual condition. This is the fundamental reason why AEIOU has been given to you. AEIOU has been given to help you nurture the spiritual condition that is given. How is the nurturing going on? It's just like nurturing a baby. The mother feeds various things. The mother gives various things. The mother gives attention. Essentially, what the mother is doing is, mother is giving attention to the baby in multiple ways. She bathes the baby. She clothes the baby. She feeds the baby. She cleans the baby. What is one thing that fundamentally she is doing there? In every activity, she is giving attention. That's it. Right? So if you want to nurture anything, you have to pay attention. That is all. So if you want to nurture your own spiritual condition, what you have to do? You have to pay attention to it. That is all. Again, you remember the fundamental thing I said earlier on. Effortless effort. That should be very clear in your mind. You should not put too much of force to nurture the spiritual condition. See, the baby, when it is born, it is so delicate that we all feel scared to hold it. Now, those of you people who have not married, you will get to the stage. So don't worry. When you have the small baby, the few days old baby, it is so delicate that you feel scared to touch it, feel scared to hold it. It is so delicate. Okay. Now, as and when it grows, it becomes easier to handle it. That's why generally babies are not given to males. We are a bit rough in handling it. Generally, it is the mother or the females who tend to handle the babies more in the initial few weeks to few months. After that, once the baby is kind of reasonably okay, then it is given to the males. So in other words, if you become a father, you should also become very delicate in the way that you handle things. You cannot be rough in the way that you handle things and expect that you are going to handle your baby. It's not going to be possible. Likewise, you cannot be rough. I'm talking about the brothers. You cannot be rough in handling your spiritual condition. You have to be learned to be delicate in handling the spiritual conditions. Okay. So we've already come to 7:10. We have not even started even one page, one line. But we've had very nice discussion today. These were all things which are coming in the meditations today. So I thought I'll just share with you that this is how the journey occurs, progresses. Sarina? So any questions? It's already 7:10. It's still raining here. In Bangalore, it's kind of raining here. Left, right, center. 3 days now, continuously it's raining. Yesterday afternoon it rained. Yesterday night